to the agreement that we had yesterday verbally that's going to be documented. They're going to provide the government of Jamaica with a detailed listing which will take us to Christmas and take us to January. And that will be able to give communities timelines similar to what we did at the end of Beryl, because percentages mean nothing to me. It means nothing. If you don't know where your community is and when you expect it to get back light and you can't plan, then you're just in frustration and anxiety. So we will get that, and we will publish that, or the JPS, once we sign off on it, will publish that on a daily basis as they did in the last few weeks of Beryl when we got on top of them to share information. But I want to state again, this is not a fix that does not include the worst affected areas. This includes sections of the worst affected areas for Christmas and by end of January, early February.
Member from St. Andrew Southern.
Thank you.
Turn your mic on, please.
Minister, the context of your presentation in relation to the JPS situation is that the license expires July 2027. Notice has been given, triggering consequences of license termination. Jamaica has roughly 20% of the equity in JPS. The funding gap, based on the recently done work to do the restoration of the grid, stations, transmission, posts, etc., is around $350 million US. So our 20%, if you're looking at it as a shareholder, our 20% would be $70 million. But we are actually taking the risk of lending an unsecured loan to JPS of $150 million, which is twice the proportion of the equity that we hold in the business. My question to you is, other $200 million currently not funded, but which is necessary to achieve the timeline that you have indicated for restoration. What is the assurance that that $200 million will be raised on a timely basis so as to enable the necessary expenditures to be made by JPS to hit the target, which are presumably fairly aggressive targets given the extent of the damage to the grid? And what is the time frame that it has to be raised by for that target to be met? I'd like to know the time frame for that. Secondly, would we be disbursing our one before that $200 million is in place? Are we going to take the risk lending that money to JPS, funded out of the consolidated fund you've said? I was going to ask you how it's going to be funded. That's roughly the same amount as the cat bond drawdown, we're told. It's 150, which Jamaica has been seeing as being critical to the housing, shelter, the school fixing up, the health centers and hospitals, etc. JPS is now going to get the benefit of that money. I want to know whether we're going to take that risk, burst those funds to JPS until the damage fund is fully funded. As it stands now, all you've told us is you've left it up to them and they're to come back. That, I think, is a risk we're not prepared to take as a country. I wanted to know which GOJ entity is going to carry the loan. So is it DBJ? Which entity is going to be the lender of record? Because part of what you've said is a mechanism that assures repayment, you've said, is that if at the end of July 2027, there is no renewal of the license because you can't agree terms, and you're acquiring the assets of JPS, you're saying that 150 would be a set-off, essentially. That's what I read you to be saying, that you would recover the 150, it would go in reduction of what you would have to pay them to acquire the assets. So set-off requires mutuality, meaning that the person who owes you is the same person you owe. So I want to know which entity within the government is going to carry that loan to the. I think it's necessary for us to do what is necessary to get JPS up and running as quickly as possible. But I think we have to do it very prudently and sensibly so that we don't unnecessarily expose taxpayers to loss. So I would like your assurance, Minister, that that $200 million will be coughed up by JPS, perhaps by its two large overseas shareholder, Marubeni and East West Power, but we need to know it's funded before we put our one. So I'll summarize. One is the timeline for JPS to fund the $200 million gap, and whether you would ensure that that funding is in place before you expose our $150 million. Which GOJ entity is going to carry the loan, $150 million loan that will be made to JPS, and what, if anything, is being done to build greater resilience into the grid in those areas where the grid is being substantially rebuilt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me indicate very clearly for all of Jamaica to hear. The meeting that we had yesterday morning, where the Minister of Finance and the Financial Secretary was there, we ironed out a way forward, realizing the seriousness and the time-sensitive nature of this response. So the first answer to your question is that this government is prepared on behalf of the people of Jamaica to release the $150 million in whatever tranches are required as quickly as possible to get the restoration going. And that's the difference between a caring government and somebody who has a financial background. The people want light. Okay? So let me just make that clear.
Point of order, Minister.
Point of order.
Minister, point of order.
Minister standing on his feet, talking into the mic. You don't need to personalize your response. You don't need to get hot under the collar. It's a legitimate question I'm asking. And I'm just, so don't bother about having a financial background. I want to know a simple question. Are you going to ensure the funding is in place? And now you're coming back and personalizing it in a totally unnecessary way.
Let me repeat. The member is saying that his position is that he would not release the $150 million unless he knew where the $200 million was coming from. That's what he said. That's what he said. That's what he said. Hansard is there. Hansard is there. Hansard is there. Hansard is there. And I am
Minister,
telling you,
Minister,
I am telling you.
Minister.